What would you think if I told you that when a man cannot let go of a woman, it's rarely about love? That beneath his longing, his messages, his late-night nostalgia, there lives something older, darker, and far more primitive, the cry of an ego faced with its own extinction. You see, when she walks away, it is not just the woman that disappears, it is the reflection he built of himself in her eyes. The man who cannot release her is not trapped in devotion, he is trapped in identification. He clings, not because she is irreplaceable, but because she once mirrored back to him the illusion of wholeness. Carl Jung understood this with haunting precision. He called it projection, the unconscious act of placing our own unlived parts, our disowned beauty and buried wounds, into another. For many men, the woman becomes a screen for the unhealed self. When he looked at her, he did not see her. He saw the gentleness he was forbidden to express, the tenderness he suppressed to survive, the compassion he believed made him weak. And so she became sacred, not because of who she was, but because she carried what he had lost. But projections, by nature, are fragile. They shimmer with divine light only until reality intrudes. The moment the woman steps out of the script he wrote for her, the spell fractures. The goddess becomes human, the muse becomes mirror, and he, stripped of his illusion, is left with himself. It is here that obsession is born. Not out of passion, but panic. Because to let her go would mean facing the abyss, that hollow silence where his unclaimed soul waits for him to return. You can almost feel it when this kind of man tries to move on. He repeats her name like a mantra, revisits memories as if they were sacred relics, stalks her digital shadow for proof that she still exists. But what he's really searching for is not her, it's himself, the version of him that felt alive when she was near. Love, for such a man, is not a meeting of equals, it is a refuge from inner emptiness. The tragedy is ancient. Long before he met her, he was already searching. Every boy grows under the shadow of his mother, not just her warmth, but her absence. The first woman becomes the blueprint for all others. If her love was conditional, distant, unpredictable, his psyche learns to equate attachment with survival. And when he finds a woman who triggers that old ache, he mistakes it for destiny. He believes he's found the one, when in truth, he's found the wound. Jung called this the mother complex, the deep psychic tether that keeps a man enslaved to his earliest emotional patterns. He doesn't just want love, he wants redemption. He wants the feminine to heal what the feminine once hurt. But no woman can carry that task without being crushed by its weight. For she is not his healer, she is his mirror. And mirrors do not fix what they reflect, they reveal it. That's why when she pulls away, he unravels. The illusion collapses. The boy inside him, the one who never learned to soothe his own pain, awakens in terror. To him, separation feels like death. Because at the level of the psyche, it is a kind of death, the death of dependency, of projection, of the false self. And most men are not taught how to die to themselves. They fight instead, gripping tighter, mistaking control for love, attachment for connection. This is why his longing feels both desperate and dignified, like a wounded animal trying to protect something sacred. But it is not love that he protects, it is identity. The relationship becomes a battlefield between who he wants to be and who he truly is. The more she withdraws, the more his shadow consumes him. His anger, his begging, his obsession, they are all expressions of a psyche at war with its own reflection. And you, the woman he cannot let go of, you were never the enemy. You were the catalyst. You awakened his inner storm, stirred the unconscious forces he'd buried under years of control and pride. You did not create his chaos, you exposed it. Your absence did not break him, it revealed the fractures that were already there. To the observing eye, it may look like heartbreak, but beneath it lies something more profound, the invitation to confront the shadow. If he dares, he will discover that the woman he lost was never truly the source of his suffering. She was the mirror pointing him toward the work he must finally begin. Yet few take that path. Most remain chained to memory, forever chasing ghosts of themselves. When a man refuses to let go, what he truly resists is transformation. For love, when it ends, demands a kind of death, the dissolution of the roles, the surrender of illusions, the humility to face one's naked self. But ego does not die gracefully. It bargains, pleads, constructs stories of betrayal and injustice, anything to avoid the silence that follows truth. The man who clings is not fighting for the woman. He is fighting against the void that her absence unveils. In Jungian terms, this void is the threshold of individuation, the process through which the self becomes whole. But to reach it, one must step through pain without anesthesia. Most men have been conditioned to avoid this descent. They are told to be stoic, but not in the true sense. The Stoic philosopher Seneca spoke of calm acceptance, of meeting loss without bitterness. Yet, modern masculinity often mistakes suppression for strength. When a man suppresses what he feels, his emotions do not vanish. They rot in the unconscious, fermenting into fixation, jealousy, and rage. So when love ends, all that buried emotion erupts. He may appear composed on the surface, but inside, chaos reigns. He relives every moment, not as memory, but as evidence, proof that he once mattered, that he was once seen. The woman's absence becomes a mirror of the mother's distance, of every rejection that whispered, "You are not enough." His psyche twists itself in loops of self-doubt and fantasy, trying to rewrite the ending. If only she returned, he thinks, he could feel whole again. But that longing is deception. What he truly seeks is not her forgiveness, it is his own. Every man carries within him two archetypal forces, the lover and the warrior. The warrior fights to protect, to possess, to conquer. The lover seeks connection, surrender, and beauty. But when these forces are imbalanced, love turns into battle. The man who cannot let go has allowed his wounded warrior to guard the tomb of a dead relationship. He mistakes resistance for loyalty, pain for devotion. His lover weeps silently within, begging for release, but his ego cannot bear the loss of control. So he holds on, to the text messages, to her photographs, to fragments of conversation that keep the illusion alive. There is tragedy in this, but also poetry. Because within his struggle lies the seed of awakening. The same fire that burns him can purify him. Jung wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This darkness, the grief, the obsession, the anger, is not his enemy. It is his teacher. If he were to face it fully, without denial or distraction, he would find that his suffering is not punishment, but initiation. Imagine him standing before that darkness, stripped of her memory, his pride, his control. All that remains is himself, trembling before the truth he has long evaded, that love was never meant to complete him. It was meant to reveal him. Every heartbreak, every loss, every woman he couldn't let go of, was a messenger from the unconscious, calling him toward wholeness. But wholeness terrifies those who have built their worth upon validation. So he stays in the loop. He watches her move on, invents stories of betrayal, rewrites her image to preserve his ego. One day she's the angel he lost, the next she's the villain who ruined him. This oscillation is not madness. It's the psyche's attempt to maintain balance when the foundation has collapsed. To hate her is easier than to face himself. To blame her is safer than to admit that the love he offered came not from abundance, but from emptiness. And yet, somewhere in that emptiness lies redemption. Because only when everything external has been stripped away can the true self begin to emerge. The man who cannot let go is standing before a sacred threshold, one that few cross willingly. If he listens, the silence of loss will speak to him. It will tell him that love was never supposed to be ownership, that attachment is not intimacy, and that freedom is not found in control but in surrender. You, the woman who has felt his grip, must understand. His pain was never your burden to carry. You did not break him by walking away. You simply ended the illusion that kept him from meeting himself. In the stillness of your absence, he will either awaken or decay. That choice is his initiation, not into heartbreak, but into consciousness. There comes a moment, often quiet and unremarkable, when the man who cannot let go finally begins to see through the fog. The desperation that once felt like proof of love begins to exhaust him. His anger no longer fuels him. His memories no longer comfort him. The illusion begins to lose its power. And though he resists it, this weariness is sacred. It marks the beginning of awakening. Because obsession cannot coexist with truth. It feeds only on fantasy, and fantasy withers under the light of awareness. In Jungian terms, this is the confrontation with the shadow, the part of himself he has avoided through attachment. Every accusation he once threw toward the woman, she abandoned me, she betrayed me, she changed, begins to turn inward. He starts to realize that what he called her change was simply her growth, and what he called her betrayal was her boundary. Beneath the pain, a subtle clarity begins to form. She was never responsible for the parts of him that were still unhealed. But the shadow is cunning. It does not dissolve peacefully. It thrashes and tempts. It whispers that maybe she will come back, that maybe there's still a chance. Yet every time he reaches outward, reality slaps his hand away. The psyche is relentless in its insistence. Look inward. And so he begins the descent. The same mind that once replayed her voice now turns toward his own silence. It is not pleasant, but it is necessary. Because a man cannot meet his soul while clinging to an image of someone else's love. It is here that Stoic philosophy aligns with Jungian depth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The man's suffering is born not from what she did, but from his refusal to accept what is. He keeps trying to rewrite the story, to control the ending. But love is not a script, it is a mirror, and mirrors do not bend to will. Slowly, the storm quiets. He begins to see that what he mistook for love was often fear. Fear of solitude, fear of inadequacy, fear of being unseen. He clung to her because she made him feel real. But that feeling was borrowed, temporary, dependent. The real task now is to cultivate a sense of self that does not dissolve in the absence of another. This is the work of individuation, to stand as a whole being, not as a fragment seeking completion in another soul. And yet, this realization does not erase the tenderness he once felt. It transforms it. He begins to see love not as possession, but as expansion, the force that awakens dormant truths, even if it burns in the process. What once felt like punishment becomes initiation. The woman he could not let go of becomes a symbol, an archetype of the divine feminine, not to be possessed, but to be integrated. For every man must eventually reconcile with his anima, the inner feminine that holds his capacity for empathy, intuition, and emotional depth. Without that integration, he will keep seeking her in others, chasing the same pattern, the same ghost. Every new woman will wear the mask of the last, until he finally understands that the feminine he seeks outside is the energy he has buried within. When he honors that truth, he no longer chases women to feel whole. He begins to relate from wholeness itself. For the woman observing this cycle, there is often confusion. She wonders why he cannot simply move on, why he oscillates between love and resentment, worship and blame. But to understand him through this lens is to see that his struggle is not against her, it is against his own becoming. She was the flame that illuminated his unconscious. And once that flame withdrew, he was left in darkness, the same darkness every soul must pass through to find the light within. It takes courage to face that darkness. Most men distract themselves, with work, with conquest, with new faces that blur into one another. But some, in rare moments of stillness, finally sit with the ache. And in that ache, something remarkable happens. The pain that once felt unbearable becomes strangely beautiful. It reveals the depth of his capacity to feel. And that depth, once embraced, becomes wisdom. For love is not lost when the relationship ends. It changes form, from attachment to awareness, from possession to presence. When he finally understands this, he does not need to hold on. He can bless her memory without chaining himself to it. He can love her still, but without needing her return. That is the quiet miracle of inner work, the realization that letting go is not the end of love, it is its evolution. At last, he stands before the silence he once feared, and finds that it does not devour him. It holds him. What he mistook for emptiness begins to feel like peace. The ghosts that haunted him lose their shape. The memories soften. He no longer needs to rewrite the story, no longer needs to be the hero or the victim. He understands now that love was never meant to rescue him from himself. It was meant to reveal him to himself. Jung taught that no one becomes whole without descending into their own underworld. The man who could not let go has now walked that shadowed path. He has faced the death of illusion, the collapse of identity, the loneliness that strips away every false comfort. And yet, in that death, something sacred is born, the self, not the persona. He realizes that to love deeply is not to own, not to control, but to see another soul clearly without losing sight of his own. The woman he could not release becomes something different in his mind now, no longer an obsession, but an archetype. She is no longer her, but the symbol of what awakened him, of what forced him to grow. She represents the mirror through which he glimpsed his own depths. The longing that once burned with agony becomes gratitude. For without her departure, he might never have met the parts of himself he long denied. And you, the woman who lived through his clinging, his chaos, his inability to release, you must know this truth as well. His suffering was never a reflection of your worth. His attachment did not measure the depth of his love, but the depth of his wound. You were the mirror, not the medicine. The storm that followed your silence was not your doing, it was his soul trying to awaken. In the end, what separates those who evolve from those who remain trapped is not who they loved, but how they learned from love. Some will spend a lifetime chasing what left them, worshipping the ghosts of intimacy. But others, the few who dare to face their inner darkness, will rise transformed. The pain becomes their teacher, the absence becomes initiation, and love becomes something freer, purer, infinitely deeper. There is no weakness in letting go. There is only truth, the truth that love cannot be confined to possession, nor identity built upon another's reflection. When he finally releases her, he is not losing her, he is returning to himself. He discovers that he was never empty, only unaware. That what he sought in her eyes was always waiting within his own. And when he meets a woman again, it will be different. No longer will he grasp at her to fill a void. He will not demand that she heal what he has already faced. He will love her not as his salvation, but as his equal, as two souls walking parallel paths toward greater wholeness. This is what Jung called the sacred union, not of man and woman, but of the masculine and feminine within each human being. For it is only after integration that love becomes what it was meant to be, not dependency, but communion. Not need, but choice. Not projection, but presence. He will understand then that real love does not bind, it liberates. It does not consume, it expands. And the woman, the one who once left him to find her own peace, will remain forever significant, not as the one who got away, but as the one who showed him the door to his own becoming. She was never his possession, she was his passage. Through her, he learned that love is not about holding on, but about allowing. Not about claiming, but about seeing. So he releases her, not with bitterness, but with a quiet reverence, knowing that to let her go is not to lose, but to honor. And as he walks away, lighter than he has ever been, he finally understands the truth that eluded him for so long. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.